I'm your host, Caitlin Daniel, creator of Sci-Fi Leadership, and if you're new here, welcome. I specialize in empowering leaders as they navigate how to best support mental health and well-being in our schools. This week's episode is going to be a little different because last week I was preparing to go to the American Educational Research Association Conference of 2024, which was in Philadelphia this year. And so this week I've decided to hit record and talk about my experiences going to that conference and what I'm left sitting with now that I'm back home. So a little bit about the American Educational Research Association, or AERA, conference this year. So AERA in general does a national annual conference that is open to anyone. Anyone in the field of education is welcome to attend. So as you know, I am currently a doctoral student going for my PhD in Ed Leadership and Policy. And I've been a former teacher and have worked in schools and with children for nearly a decade. And I met so many people at this conference. I met teachers, current principals, lot of researchers in education and policy advocates in education, as well as people who run nonprofits and consultants, and basically anyone who's in the field. There were I think it's over 15,000 people attended this year, which I didn't realize it was such a huge conference. So it is so welcoming, and there's such a variety of people there and sessions. So if you're someone, especially a leader who works in education, and you haven't yet attended this conference, I would highly recommend. They offered such a variety of sessions on multiple subjects that there was so much to choose from. It was hard not to find something that you wouldn't be interested in. I know I had my schedule packed. And as someone who's interested in learning more about mental health and mental health advocacy and how to expand our awareness and the research surrounding mental health in our P through 20 spaces, I attended every session that I could that was mental health related, and that was so many. It was such a joy to see that mental health was a topic of conversation, and that people were out there starting to do this work or have been doing this work for a long time, and just to be able to hear from them and what they're doing and what they've kind of seen in our educational spaces, especially around our teachers and our students' mental health experiences. Overall, AERA this year was my first time attending a big conference like that, and it was a really, really great experience. Like I said, there were so many sessions and opportunities for networking. The one thing I wish I did more of was probably do a little bit more networking. Definitely, if you plan on attending and you want to make connections, have a business card, which was something I didn't really think about, or be ready to give over your email, and just don't be afraid to go up and talk to someone. That was something that I was really working on, especially someone who, doesn't like to bother people or is a little bit anxious and doesn't want to really come off as awkward. That's a skill that I now know that I want to have when I go to the conference next year. So in regards to what I'm left sitting with now that I've come home from the conference, like I mentioned before, I attended as many sessions as I could that were mental health related. So some of them were on student mental health experiences, teacher mental health experiences, teacher trauma, teachers who've experienced both primary or secondary traumas and how that affects, the work that they're trying to do in the classroom. And there was another session on leader mindfulness and well-being. That was really, really interesting, as well as several that were looking at social and emotional learning. One of the themes and something that I'm sitting on in terms of research around mental health in education, regardless if we're talking about students or teachers or leaders, is that I'm left sitting with is that mental health is a social justice concern. And I feel like I want to see more research done with mental health being looked at in that context, especially if we're talking about centering social justice in our work in order to advance equity. I think the conversation of mental health being present in that is really, really important, and something that I'm just sitting with now that I'm coming back from this conference, and I'm just thinking about how I want to look at research I want to do with mental health, looking at it through kind of a social justice lens and seeing what's out there. Another thing that I'm left sitting with after, going to some sessions that were on teacher attrition, teacher mental health, teacher shortages, sub-shortages, experiences of pre-service teachers, and the mental health of, pre-service teachers versus teachers and novice teachers. And the person who's just conducted the research and is giving like a talk during this session is saying, here's the research that I did, here's the lead up to why I did it the way I did, and then here's our findings. But then they talk about this trend of that in their lit review leading up to the research that they did, there was all of these kind of previous findings before them and ways that the surveys that we've given around mental health, including stuff from the CDC or the National Institute of Mental Illness, and a few others. I can't remember them off the top of my head. But the trend is that they noticed that they were just kind of rediscovering that this problem is still persistent. So yes, they've done research in a different location, different geographics, different populations, different schools, different systems, but yet we're still seeing these kind of persistent numbers that indicate that there is a mental health crisis in education, and that their research findings still add to that conversation. But basically there's this cyclicalness of we've now rediscovered a thing that we already kind of knew was happening. And one of the presenters, and I can't remember who, but they had a really great line that basically said, with these research findings that they're presenting, they know that we're just kind of re-diagnosing the same problem, and we're re-finding evidence that just concludes that there's a mental health crisis in education. So in our lit review and setting up our research study, they mentioned that there's a mental health crisis in education. They list all these fabulous statistics, some that I already mentioned in some previous videos, but that the research just refound, those same diagnoses that were in a mental health crisis. And they had a really great line that said, at what point do we stop trying to diagnose the problem and start trying to really come up with solutions and like actual actions that someone can take to address the mental health crisis in education? And I thought that was really, really important that they highlighted and framed it that way, because that is very true. That's how I feel with all of the research that I've read that's out there. The scope of mental health and education research is limited, but the ones that are available just kind of keep saying that this same problem is persistent. It's persistent. It's persistent. And we're seeing it, anywhere from the last 10 years to today, that we're rediscovering the same persistency in mental health from our youth to our teachers and now our leaders. And so at what point do we kind of use our research as a call to action to come up with more solutions that might lead towards addressing or improving mental health related concerns within our systems that we're operating in? So just some food for thought. The other thing that I left sitting with, I attended a couple sessions on, assessment and using quantitative approaches to developing our assessment tools and our measures and kind of what we use. And it's in a lot of stuff that we do in education. I know in one of my positions right now, one of my role is research and assessment for a program. So how do we evaluate a program? What tools are we developing? And I have to have conversations all the time about like what are our values and what do we want to know, so I can create a tool or use a pre-existing tool that will help us be more informative. And I feel like that conversation is very important also when we're looking at how are we measuring mental health concerns within our systems. So through our tools, our assessments, our surveys, what are we asking? Are we just giving to survey to give a survey? How are we framing the questions that we're asking? How are we framing the tools, like the assessments and the screening processes that we're using, and our professional development opportunities that we're giving to our teachers and our staff? How are we framing those in an asset strengths-based lens? Because what we don't want to do is have our tools continue to perpetuate the stigmas and fear-based attitudes that already surround mental illness and diagnosis. We want to use these tools to, be informative, to be empowering, to be holistic, to help us construct better systems in place that will support our teachers and staff who may be struggling with their mental health, or supporting how we recognize when someone is struggling with their mental health. And the last thing that I'm left sitting with is I attended a really, really great session. It was called Wounded Healer, Leadership and Pedagogy. That session was really, really wonderful and very validating. It's a new term to me. It might be a new term for you too, but it's the concept of the wounded healer. And I didn't realize until I was sitting in that session that I have been trying to frame and describe that exact feeling, but I didn't have a word to describe it. So basically, the concept is those of us out there who have experienced, things that have changed us, traumas, adversities, and so you have your wounds and you're carrying them, but you hold those in contention with healing and being a person with light, of strength, that wants to spread that like healing to others. And how do you hold both of those things? So you're both wounded and healing, and you are a healer to others because you're trying to spread that and pull people with you, and bring people up with you and support people in their stuff that they've been wounded with. And I just really, really loved the framework of that concept, and it's something that I'm going to do a deep dive into, I think, so you might see a video on that. If you're familiar with the concept and you have like suggested readings, please plug those in the comments below, because I would love to hear your thoughts and things like that, because I was just absolutely amazed by it. And like I said, it just felt so validating to hear those terms and just to listen to them talk about the project and the things that they've, the experiences that they've had and their own healing journey, and how they're still in education, and that they're very, very, like you can hear the passion in their voice, that they want to help support others who are also struggling or who have struggled, and create a community of support. And they also advocate for more holistic care and holistic approaches that could be embedded in our educational systems. And yeah, I just left that session with just so much strength and validation and inspiration to continue like persisting, because there are some days where I feel like, I can't hold all the pieces of everything that I'm supposed to do. But maybe I would have to do it the way that it's supposed to be done. And with that, I'm gonna leave it on this video. If you've watched this video all the way to the end, I highly recommend that you go to AERA if you're someone that works in the field of education or interested in learning what's like currently happening. And I really appreciate everyone who's interacted with this video and interacted with all of my videos, because I know that this project just started and this channel just started, but I have so many aspirations for this channel and what I want to do research-wise and things like that. So I really appreciate your support. And with that, if you want to see more educational mental health content for school leadership, please subscribe to join this amazing community here on YouTube. I have videos releasing every other Tuesday. Until then, thanks for listening. Take care.